Welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm Joachim Haas, Ultimus Product Manager, and I will be helping with the logistics of today's webinar. Our listeners will be in listen-only mode. However, you can ask questions in the Q&A area at any time. We'll answer your questions after the presentations. With that, let me turn it over to Carsten Neumann.
Thanks, Joachim. I would like to welcome you to today's webinar, Using Low-Code BPM Platforms to Accelerate Digital Transformation. So now let me introduce myself. I'm Carsten Neumann, Senior Vice President, Enterprise Solutions at Ultimus, and I'm the leader of Ultimus Solution Business globally. So we all know that digital is transforming today's business landscape, and digital transformation is essential in today's world. So we have assembled a group of very experienced people with multiple viewpoints and backgrounds to explain the role that low-code BPM platforms can play in this digital transformation. First up will be acclaimed BPM and low-code industry analyst Richardson of Forrester Research. Clay not only coined the phrases low-code and low-code BPM, but he has extensive experience implementing BPM solutions. And covering the implementation side of digital transformation, we also have with us today Hasan Irmak. He's the founder and the CEO of Imageware, a Swiss company with a premier reputation and track record implementing BPM-based solutions in government and regulated industries. And as I mentioned, I'm Carsten Neumann, and I will give you the vendor perspective and talk about our approach to low-code BPM. So now, without further delay, let me pass the microphone to Mr. Clay Richardson. Clay.
Code solutions and methodologies are helping companies accelerate digital transformation, or even we can say digital innovation, right? And so we know a lot of companies are struggling with this. How do I speed up digital change? How do I introduce new digital products and capabilities into the market? And a lot of this is being driven, the push towards low code is being driven directly by the shift to what Forrester calls the age of the customer. And so at Forrester, just for those of you that don't know me, and I imagine most people on the line don't or may have come across my name, but at Forrester, I lead up Forrester's research on business process management, business process improvement. As Carsten said, I also focus on low-code development platforms. And a big part of my coverage looks at how do we design better processes, better experiences for customers and how we engage customers. And so when we look at process and process change, we know that as new eras come in, companies have shifted how they focused on process improvement to become more competitive, right? And so if we take a look at this, how business process, BPM, I guess I'd just say business process, has evolved over the last 100 years or 120 years, we can go back to age of manufacturing. At that time, the focus on business process management was around assembly lines. So you think of people like Henry Ford, Boeing, others, who were primarily focused on trying to improve manufacturing and then enhancing or optimizing their assembly lines. Also, as we got into the 1960s, it was about the age of distribution and supply chains. And then getting into the 90s, business process improvement was about re-engineering processes for the age of information, so improving workflows and improving how information flowed through the organization. And we saw companies like Google, Amazon really become major players during that time because they could move information around and share information in new, innovative ways. When we get to age of the customer and we begin to talk about digital, what do you think business process improvement begins to focus on? So I'll give you a second to think about that, to pause. I'll pause for a second. And what we see is, in the age of the customer, business process improvement focuses on engagement. How do we engage customers? How do we make processes more convenient and easier to use for customers? How do we make sure customers are excited and obsessed with the processes in our company in a way to design great processes? So if we look at this, just as an example, to give you an example of what this means in the real world, what we see companies do. I'm sure, like a lot of you, I travel a lot. I'm sure a lot of you travel also a good bit. And so I use Avis as my rental car company whenever I'm traveling for work or for leisure, I guess you say, or just traveling on my own. I use Avis. And Avis, what I was impressed with more recently, they redesigned their mobile experience to deliver a really great customer experience. And so the process around renting a car, reserving a car, picking the car up, returning the car, they redesigned that process and redesigned the mobile experience to make it easier. So what I really loved about this example of engagement is, for Avis, now the car itself is digitally connected. So I, as a consumer renting from Avis, before I even pick my car up, they're notifying me of, how much fuel is in the car, what stall it's located in, what is the mileage in the car. Even if you take a look here, I can even have the car flash its lights when I show up. So I'm sure many of you as travelers, if you've shown up to get a rental car at 11 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock, you just got off of a late flight, and you're searching the parking lot to try to find the car. You're having the cab or the bus drive you around. And so this is really nice from a customer experience perspective. They redesigned this process and the app in a way that engaged with me, allowed me to engage directly with the product. Even when I return the car, I could do automated check-in. So I don't have to interact with the human, not that I'm anti-human, but I don't have to interact with people if I don't want to. If I'm in a hurry, I can just say check-in, bill to this credit card, and I can run to my gate to catch my flight. And so we're seeing companies where you might think of Avis as, a traditional car rental company, but we're seeing companies like Avis redesign their customer experience, redesign their business processes to be able to deliver deeper, richer engagement. And we have to focus on both of those, right? And we see, this is a recent survey that we conducted just a couple months back. And so we wanted to ask business decision makers, what is the current focus of your business process improvement programs? And then what's the future? What direction are you headed in? What will be the primary driver in the future, 2 years out? And so this is really interesting data. We also asked, what was the focus of process improvement 2 years ago? And so we had about 250 people, business decision makers, respond. And so you can see here, 2 years ago, these decision makers indicated that cost reduction was their number one driver for process improvement and process change. Productivity, number two, improving the customer experience was way down at number three. When we asked them today, what is your priority? What's driving business process improvement today? They indicated that customer experience is number one. Digital transformation now is number two. And if you look, digital transformation was way down at number 5 2 years ago. Now it's number 2. And number 3 is cost reduction. So it's starting to flip. If we go out 2 years ahead, when we ask them 2 years from now, what do you think the primary driver for business process improvement will be? 50% said digital transformation. So that's a complete flip, right? That's pretty dramatic in terms of shifts that we see, right? Digital transformation went from 5th place to, in 2 years, it'll be the number one driver, at least based on what the respondents said. Then improved customer experience will be the second key driver. And then productivity actually will be the third. And so we see this when we're talking to customers and talking to companies about how they're reshaping their business process improvement programs and their BPM programs. We see digital as a key driver in these conversations, but also combining it with the customer experience. And it's really hard, very difficult when you're talking to customers and companies about process improvement to separate out the customer experience side from the digital side. Most of the companies we see leading this, they see those things intertwined, right? Creating new digital products and services, connected to better customer experience, and redesigning our processes to support this new direction. So one of the challenges, though, that we see with teams trying to make this shift and companies trying to make this shift is that there just aren't enough developers. So companies trying to redesign processes, build new mobile apps, there's a shortage of developers. And so in a report that we published, a colleague of mine, Jeffrey Hammond, published a report that highlighted this shortage of developers to create all of these new apps and to innovate. And so in that report, Jeffrey highlights that over 500,000 new developers will be needed between now and 2020. And so the key there is, how do we begin to bring more people in? How do we begin to overcome this gap and still be able to deliver on the promise of digital and some of the process change that I was talking about in previous slides? So not only is there a developer shortage that we know exists, there's also an explosion, just a new range, wide range of new frameworks, new toolkits that teams have to learn. So not only are you trying to say, okay, we just need to find people to fill the gap, you're also having to train up on new skills very rapidly, right? And so when you look at this, I just went out on the web to do a search around new development frameworks. And these are just, most of these are just new JS frameworks that are becoming more widely used, like Angular, Meteor, Dojo, React. So all of these different new technologies that developers have to keep up with, it's a challenge. I mean, there's two big pieces when it comes to going digital and connecting with the customer experience. It's just filling the gap, but also starting to pick up these new technologies. And it can be daunting. I remember a couple months back, I was at a Barnes & Noble, and I was just browsing the technology section. And actually, I was starting to look at some of these new technologies, just trying to see what people are doing. And there's a young guy there, probably 25, 26 years old. And I asked him, you know, he was browsing the sections also. And I asked him, well, what technologies are you focused on? Like, which ones are you trying to pick up? And he said, well, I want to be a full stack developer, but there's just so much to learn that I've concluded that I can only focus on one part of the stack. So he said his thing, he's just going to try to focus on his back end. And, you know, hopefully he'll be able to have people in his company that can focus on the front end, or they would have to outsource it, right? Or get a third-party vendor to do the development. And that really highlights what we're hearing from customers is, you know, it's just so much to learn, so much to pick up. We don't have enough resources. And then a third dimension that's coming in here is just the speed, right? The need to deliver apps significantly faster, right? If we go back, you know, 4 or 5 years, 12 to 18 months or 2 to 4 months to deliver new applications, new apps was acceptable. Now, what we're beginning to see, and what we know we'll be seeing more in the future, is these zero-day events where customers or management and executives are coming to development teams and process teams and saying, hey, we need to get this out today. We had a big issue or competitive opportunity, and we need to build this app in a very short amount of time. And we hear this over calls with clients and over interviews that we do, where one example is insurer, where the insurance company that's based in the UK was asked to build a new front end, new application for onboarding customers for a new product that they were trying to test out, new product idea. And they were given a few days to build, to throw up essentially a MVP to test out the idea. So we're seeing these more and more, these opportunities come up and projects have to be delivered quickly. So you have these three dimensions that are challenges, you could almost say, this shortage of skills, new rapid technology coming out, rapidly changing, and then this issue around delivering very, very quickly, right? And so when we take a closer look at this is data from Stack Overflow. They shared their developer survey with us, and so this is a developer community, and it's fascinating that 40% of developers are self-taught, right? And so when we talk about the shortage, the developer shortage, and explosion of new tools and new frameworks, what's really fascinating there is there's a lot of additional capacity that most companies aren't really tapping into, right? The self-taught developer, or someone that doesn't have a classic background in computer science or went to get a master's degree, but people that are very interested in coding or interested in development and teaching themselves. So you can see 42% of developers self-taught, 38% Bachelor of Computer Science, but even this 37% on-the-job training, right? And so we're seeing where there's increasing demand and interest by people to actually train themselves to be developers, and even existing developers learning new technologies and being self-taught. And so going back to the slide that I showed where it had, shortage of 500,000 developers, the interesting nugget there is that we did analyze the data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics. But if you really drill in, the shortage is related to a shortage of computer science developers or computer scientists coming out of formal computer science programs at universities, right? And so that's where that gap is. But when we look at people who are self-taught that may not have that background, there are a lot of people out there that can begin to fill this gap that we need to start looking at. And part of the challenge here is when we look at business process management platforms or other development platforms, they have some capabilities that are important, but they also can be very complicated, right? So we asked this question recently, actually at the end of last year. This is a little bit of a different survey, but we asked this question of BPM, business process management professionals, basically people that are implementing process automation tools. We asked which capabilities are most essential to your organization. So for the technology or the automation tool that you're using, which capabilities are most essential? And so process modeling came up very high, but what we also saw an increase in was the focus on rapid application development and case management. So teams starting to see rapid application development as a key aspect of process improvement, process innovation, as opposed to in the past, rapid application development was thought of as more of a side benefit, not a direct benefit. We also asked which capabilities they found the hardest to implement, right? And the reason we asked this question is we wanted to understand, okay, if it's hard to implement in the technology or in the process automation tool, the BPM tool, then more than likely people are going to either go and do hand coding, or they won't be able to leverage a skill set that doesn't have a background in development. And so here we were able to see that data management integration, as people consider to be very difficult. Now, we've always seen this. This validated my belief that data is BPM's dirty little secret, that it's the hardest aspect of business process improvement to implement when you're using a technology. Forms UX design also ranked high in terms of difficulty to implement, and then business rules ranked very high. And the key here, again, is just starting to look at, the BPM platform's existing automation tools to understand where's the roadblocks, where do you need deep development talent, and where can you bring in talent that may not be classically trained as developers. And so we see this merging, though. Like I said before, we see more teams using BPM primarily as an application development platform. So they're not looking at large scale process transformation. They're also not looking at using Lean or Six Sigma. They're basically saying, how can we use BPM, the modeling, the drag and drop capability to speed up development? And so we see this merging between, and I should say blurring or overlap between these two, where there's different vendors that play in between these two spaces, Ultimus being an example of one, and this new space that we're carving out called low-code platforms. And so and just to be fair here, we see BPM vendors playing in the space, and we also see traditional app dev vendors playing in the space. So vendors that have drag and drop development platforms that don't necessarily have process automation as part of the platform. And so we see this overlap taking place. And so this term, you heard Carsten say I coined this term, and actually this came out of research that I started with a colleague of mine, another analyst, John Reimer, and John is in our application development delivery team, and he focuses just on application developers. I'm in the application development team, but I focus on business process professionals. And John and I have been seeing this trend for a while where companies were trying to adopt these new platforms to improve developer productivity, right? I was looking at it more from the BPM side, where teams just were using BPM just for development. They weren't concerned about the other aspects of BPM. And he was looking at it just from developer productivity. And so we asked ourselves, is this a new space? Is this something we should be taking a closer look at? And so we went off and interviewed. We ended up interviewing about 25 or so companies that were adopting these platforms to understand how were they using the platforms? Were they actually getting the results? Who was involved in the projects that these platforms supported? And when we finished the research, we walked away and said, when we did the analysis, we said, really, what we heard from customers, from these interviews, from companies, from across different industries, what we heard was they were able to use these platforms to speed up development. They were able to bring in a lower skill developer, and that sounds negative, but it's basically saying someone that doesn't have a formal background in computer science. They were able to bring those people on board, ramp them up quickly. And then what we also heard was these platforms allow us to get started very fast and to build out a prototype or build out some application and then scale it up. And so using that, we said, we believe that this category should be called low code, because we didn't hear people say no code. There was always some code that was needed, like maybe 10, 15% of the application needed to be coded using the platform. But we did hear people say it did get us across the line and allowed us to get a lot done through visual drag and drop and reducing the amount of hand coding needed. So the definition that we have is for low code is platforms that enable rapid delivery of business applications with a minimum of hand coding and minimal upfront investment in setup, training, and deployment. And the key here, when we first did the research, we focused on the first part of the definition, so platforms that enable rapid delivery. But as we talked to more and more people about how they're using the platform, we thought it was important to expand the definition and include this minimal upfront investment in setup, so being able to use these platforms in the cloud and get started at a very minimal cost, and then the deployment aspect, right? Being able to deploy in a very easy, simple way. So we thought those were important. So very little time needed for training, for setup, and deploying a new app. And so here's some of the results that we were able to document across different industries. And so we were able to validate a significant savings in time. So If you look at the U.S. government, this was for the Affordable Care Act. Some people call Obamacare. And so what this group, the team that was supporting this solution, they were focused on document compliance, or building a document compliance model to make sure that people are in compliance to receive Obamacare. Originally, they estimated with code, it would take, if they coded the solution, it would take 100 person months. They were able to build out the solution with low code. They documented this to us, 5 person months, right? That's a significant difference, right? What is that, 20 times difference. And then you can see some of the others. So we were able to validate significant time savings, 5 to 10 times speed up and time savings in delivery. So just to give you a real world example, this is a company that we interviewed and did a case study on that's using a low code platform, but they also embrace the low code approach. And I think that's important. It's not just to adopt the platform. You also have to embrace a new way of delivering applications and delivering process solutions. And so Sprint, what they were asked to do, the CEO of Sprint came to the chief enterprise architect at Sprint and said, hey, I'm going to test out a new service, new idea. You have 10 days to test out and validate whether this idea would be a hit in the market, something like that, right? And so the idea was around a new service where if someone got a phone upgrade, so when you log onto your site, you can see where you're eligible for a phone upgrade. If you're eligible for a phone upgrade, you can have a technician come out, deliver your phone, migrate all of your data off of your old phone onto your new phone, and then actually, enable the phone for you, right? And train you, teach you how to use the phone. And so the CEO felt like this would be a great service to roll out and test out to improve customer engagement. Going back to what we were saying before, this was around customer engagement. And so they needed to build this out, test it out in a very short period of time. And they were able to use their low-code platform to build out an MVP to test out the hypothesis whether this app or this new solution would be beneficial, whether customers would like it, and whether it would drive increased sales, more people upgrading. And so they were able to build this, use the low code, as their chief EA said when I did the interview. They built the initial solution, the initial service, through duct tape and bail wire, right? So low code just allowed them to build something very quickly in a short period of time, tie pieces together, visual drag and drop. They were able to put it out, tested it out in one market, got really good feedback from customers, and then using the same low code environment, they were able to scale it out to 20 markets, right? I think that's what the last I heard was they had reached rolling this out to 20 markets using the same low-code platform, which is really nice. It's pretty impressive. And so when we look at low-code and we start having these conversations around low-code, we see where there's 3 myths, or let me rephrase that. We see where companies are resistant to low-code or are slow to adopt low-code because of 3 misconceptions, right? The first one is this misconception that low-code platforms are for citizen developers and not professional developers, right? So who wants to use a low-code platform if you're a regular coder and you're used to Java? And so that's definitely a myth that we were able to debunk. In talking to teams, we saw a range of developers using low-code platforms, ranging from traditional coders, pro devs, all the way to more process pros, so a wide range of developers using low code. Also, another myth that we ran across was low code platforms eliminate the need for any programming. I already spoke to that. You still have to there's still usually some programming. We didn't have maybe 1 or 2 conversations at the most where no coding was needed. But in most cases, there's still going to be a little bit of code. And sometimes it's actually good to have a platform that allows you to code and extend the initial solution. So we're not saying code is bad. We're just saying low-code platforms eliminate a lot of the code needed. Code can be good in places where you need to extend or build some customization. Also, a misconception we hear is low-code platforms are good for small-scale apps, so they don't scale very well. And so we've talked to customers. You saw the ACA, the Affordable Care Act example, supporting tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of users and high volume transactions. So we've seen where low-code does support that type of scale. And so like I said before, we've seen this, who are the roles, right? So this notion that low-code is only for the citizen developer or business analyst. What we've seen is that the sweet spot for low-code is here with rapid devs, a little bit of coders we've seen using low-code, traditional coders using low-code to do prototyping, kind of rapid development. But we also see rapid devs, apps pros, process pros using low-code. So this is the sweet spot. And even some citizen developers, we do see that, and we're starting to do some new research looking at how citizen developers use low-code, or if they're able to use it effectively. And so just this data we captured around, well, when you do need to code with a low-code platform, where do you tend to have to code? And like I said before, a lot of it is around still databases, right, or integrating with external applications. So just to close out, one of the things I want to leave you with is we see low-code, Forrester sees low-code as a growing market. So we did a market survey based on vendor revenues. So looking at what the vendors that operate in this space, what the revenues are today. So we baselined that and then started looking at the factors that will drive this market. So explosion in new apps, new technologies, the consolidation in this space. So larger vendors acquiring smaller vendors. And so we expect to see this market grow to about 15 billion by 2020. And we're already seeing some of this consolidation and seeing rapid growth as we talk to customers, but we're projecting about a 60% year-over-year growth for the market. So it's definitely a space that you want to take seriously. That's why we're sharing this. The forecast is we want to make sure that companies that are considering low code take it seriously. It's a viable market, and we see it as an ongoing space that we'll be following also. And so with that, I want to hand it back over to Carsten. Thank you.
He said there is an urgent need to deliver applications more quickly, as success very often depends on the speed of software delivery. But I think, as you all would agree, the challenge is that this has to be achieved while the requirements are becoming more complex than ever. So what we see right now is that the traditional approaches to process automation have struggled to meet these challenges of speed and complexity. And as Clay outlined, this has driven the growth of the new low-code BPM category. And while we've talked about the need to develop quickly, we at Ultimus believe that we also have to consider costs, quality, and of course, the ability to manage. Sorry, the ability to manage these created solutions. In order to truly address all of these challenges, we need something very different, a completely new and disruptive way of thinking, a new way of creating software. And in order to meet the challenges of digital transformation, we need to transform application development and delivery. And the way to do that is to do industrialize software development. So what do I mean by industrializing software development, and why is it essential for digital transformation? So let's think about the Industrial Revolution. So before the Industrial Revolution, everything was handcrafted. So have a look at this guy. He's building everything by hand, and every single piece. So this process is slow, it's error-prone, it's expensive. And the funny thing is, that's what still happens today with software. And this is how Ultimus sees what most vendors trying to do in the low-code BPM space. So in the early stages of the Industrial Revolution, we had water power and then steam engines. They increased productivity, which was really a great deal, but we were still building the same things over and over in an error-prone way. And the progress quickly reached an unmovable boundary, kind of a limit in terms of what was possible in product or software speed, cost, and quality. So it wasn't until the final stage of the industrialization, factories that used automated assembly, that order of magnitude improvements in cost, speed, and quality were attained. And well, that's why a BMW can be produced thousands and thousands of times a week, and each one is slightly different. And I'm quite sure you would agree that there's no customer at BMW who would complain about restrictions or limitation when he's configuring his car. And that picture, that's why all too frequently we spend millions and years to develop software that looks like this, instead of like the nice BMW that I've showed before. So what we see, for decades, software engineers have sought out the holy grail of industrialization, of a factory that would generate software from requirements, where you could simply describe what you need your software to do, and all the implementation details and complexity would be taken care of automatically. I'm sure you all have heard about these different approaches of generative development or software factories, software product lines, but this nirvana for software development has always been blocked by the conventional wisdom that every software application is unique. And we think that might have been true in the 1960s, 80s, or even in 2000. But we've been building business software for a long, long time now. And in our case, Ultimus has implemented over 1,400 automated process software applications. So just like the car companies understand what people want and how to build it really well, we felt that Ultimus ought to be able just to do the same. So here's a sampling of the over 1,400 human-centric BPM solutions Ultimus has built. These solutions are very different. They have different specific names, different industries. But when you've built something hundreds of times, you discover that perhaps things aren't all that unique. And there's no longer the need for a tool that allows you to recreate the wheel faster and faster. Instead, you can get smart, apply modern industrial engineering principles. So let me show what I mean. Each one of these solutions, well, over 90% of the human-centric BPM solutions have a requester, a person or a company that wants something. Could be a customer who wants to address a complaint, someone requesting a loan, or a company requesting a building permit. They all have a product or service that is requested, like the mentioned complaint, loan, building permit, or an expense report or a defect that has to be reported. They are all supported by documents, an ID card for the loan, a photo showing the reason for a complaint, or an expense receipt. They need to be validated and approved based on business rules, policies, and regulations, and they need to be routed through a workflow. And there's a history, so you know who did what when. Now, before I show you Compost Process Solution, that's our name for this new industrial approach to low-code BPM, let me point out something. Think about how many demos you have seen of people building things, dragging and dropping, right-clicking, entering some character strings, publishing. Notice that I do not show that. I show you the result of Compost Process Solutions. And that's because in an industrial approach, you specify what you want. Like I want a 4-wheel drive with a big engine, leather seats, things like that. And all the details and complexity of how the actual building of the application is done for you. You will just have to provide your business requirements. In an industrial approach, everything else will be generated automatically. We'll have a webinar to explain how we do this. But for now, let me show you that the holy grail of software development is possible and what it looks like. Therefore, let me switch to our CPS portal. And here it is. So now let's go to the first solution, which is an employee onboarding solution. So the similarities of each solution is here on top. You see the requester, an employee, services, documents, decisions, process, and history. So in this specific solution, the employee, the requester, is the one who's onboarding into the company, and you'll find all the employee information and contact information. Here you see the services, all details about what is needed when the person is onboarding to this company. You have the documents like the employment contract or a social security card. And you have the decisions, the business rules which are there for this process. And you have the process and the history. So now let's move to a very different solution. Let's take the legal case management. And here it is, produced by CPS. You can see the same look and feel. There's also the requester, in this case, the customer, the details, all the details about the legal case, our service, the documents, the decisions, a process, which is shown right here. So you can see all the process steps and the status of the steps. And you have a history. So you can see in detail, what happened in this process. So it's the same look and feel, and there's no reinventing design and reinventing things that you have already done. It's all the same functionality. But once again, let me demonstrate what industrial BPM really means. When you want to buy a BMW in a sport version, you do not have to take care about the appropriate brakes or the suspension system. The system configures and assembles this automatically. And now let me show what this means for us using a simple example. An example of a business requirement is for every expense line in an expense report, a receipt is required. So let me show this to you. Let's go to our expense report solution. And there you find our employee Joshua Walker. He already filled in his details about his business trip. And let's go to the service tab. Now you see the airline ticket is already there. Add a new item. So what we're doing is there's a new item, maybe for the 17th. There was a hotel. And the amount was, well, let's take this. It was in euro. And the expense type is a hotel. So now let's go to the decisions. Here we are. And you see there's a document missing. Let's go to the missing document. Well, for sure, it's the receipt for the hotel. We didn't upload it so far, but let's do it now. Let's take the hotel invoice, upload it to the expense line, and you see it's there. And when you go back to the decisions, the violation is gone. Now you are able to submit the expense report. So my solution development effort is reduced to 0. When there is a new expense line, a receipt is mandatory. That's it. All of the other details are taken care of. You have just to define your requirement, and everything else is generated by CPS based on standardized pre-tested capabilities with built-in solution logic and business relevance. You don't build or program those notions. Now let me show you some additional examples of what you get for free without programming. That's about using CPS on a mobile device and the language capabilities. In order to use your time efficiently, I will play a short video rather than click around and switch between various screens. So let's go to the video. So you will see that the same expense report application looks exactly the same on an iPhone. Everything works the same. That's because with our CPS approach, well, it is the same. There's no extra work required for mobile. Mobile is not a requirement that you have to specify and then reverse engineer into your software. It's a must, and we take care of it without a developer having to build it. And as I said before, the options of different languages are getting even more important than before. And this is another powerful example of our industrial approach. So very often when processes cross people and departments, they cross geographies and of course languages. So you will see the same expense report solution, then it's in Arabic and it's even displayed right to left. So because we know that language and direction are important variables, and we build it in. So with CPS, all you need to do is to declare that Arabic or Spanish or German are languages you need. You might have to translate a few specific strings, but that's something you do once, and it is carried forward everywhere that string applies. So let's go back to our presentation. So we are separating the content, the what, from the how. So the content from language and device dependency. So let me summarize. The beauty of CPS, or an industrial approach, is that declaring the business requirements of a solution and having it generated automatically is the ultimate in speed and quality. And just like in our example, the requirement is to add a receipt to each expense line. That's all. There's no need to write long and complex technical specification. So from our point of view, it eliminates that upper limit of what you can achieve with tools that just make handcrafting more efficient. And the speed and quality translate into lower software costs and directly into accelerating digital transformation. So now I would like to turn the microphone over to Hasan Irmak of Imageware. As a system implementer, the critical requirement are the speed of implementing, quality, and manageability. Therefore, he tested several low-code platforms. So now I'm happy to hand over to Hasan, getting a view on his considerations about using low-code platforms. Hasan.
Thank you, Carsten. Hello, I'm Hasan Irmak, CEO of Imageware AG, and I would like to introduce Imageware very quickly, then spend a few minutes to talk to you about our experiences with low-code BPM solutions and how the Ultimus Compose process solutions compare. Established in 1994, Imageware is a Swiss corporation based in Bern, Switzerland. Our competency is in BPM and ECM solutions, mainly in governmental organizations and regulated industries. As we deliver custom solutions based on standard software, we partner with world's best breed of companies in their respective areas. As for BPM solutions, we have chosen partner with Ultimus. BPM is a catalyst for increasing the ROI on the digital transformation project. Hence, organizations are demanding fully integrated BPM solutions for fast and flexible results in their digital transformation projects. A recent trend in the BPM market is the low-code BPM solutions, allowing BPM developers to develop a flexible solution faster. Although the development is faster than before, we have found that some of the shortcomings of the legacy BPM systems are not addressed. We have noticed that we could not scale to enterprise solution as easy as we ought to, and solutions relied heavily on the capabilities of the individual developers. Lack of standard user interface meant that we had to train users for each solution, as it was the case before. And as you can appreciate, user acceptance of a solution greatly depends on the UI. Here again, we were left to the mercy of the creativity of the developers. The lack of source code control caused repeated coding activities in different processes, often reinventing the wheel time and time again. On top of all this, customers are demanding even faster solution development, more quality, more flexibility to adapt their solutions quickly in the business requirements changes. We are very happy to say that we have found to overcome some of these shortages with Ultimus Compose process solutions. The development is even faster than low-code solutions. At the same time, thanks to its scalability, developed solution can be accessed not only from PCs, but also from any mobile device supporting HTML browser without any further development. Thanks to standard intuitive user interface, Nearly no user training is required for additional solutions. Similar to globalized companies, localization is a very important issue also in Switzerland, where we have 4 official languages. We are pleased to say that with minimum translation effort, we can deliver multilingual UI, and each user can select their own language and without affecting anybody else. With these added refinements together, we get very high level of user acceptance of the solution, and there are benefits for the developers as well. They end up with library of composed solution modules, which they can use time and time again, reducing the development time drastically. I would like to show you an example. The process you see is an interpellation process from a cantonal government in Switzerland. All incoming inquiries from citizens, businesses, or any other governmental organizations are registered. Documents are filed, requests sent to related organization unit to reply within required time frame. They can also involve other organization units in order to take their consideration into account, or just to inform them of such a case. It consists of 1 main and 2 sub-processes. It has been running successfully over the past 15 years and have completed over 30,000 incidents. It has taken us, at that time, 4 man-months to develop. Recently, we have redone this process with CPS, and we could finish it within 2 weeks. As Carsten has previously presented, the UI looks and feel is always the same. User knows where everything is. In our case, requester, orders, documents, processes, and the history label can change with a click of a button, French or to German. As you can see, all fields and the menus changes to German, but everything is still in the same tabs and in the same place. Once the users understand this one solution, they can understand other solutions very easily. I would like to emphasize the importance of the document tab. Designer defines which documents should be present in order for the process to go through, and CPS does the rest. If there are any missing or invalid documents, the decision tab of the solution sets an incomplete status for the pending documents. The process does not go any further without completing the missing documents. All this without a single line of code. So if we summarize, low-code solution platform enables us to design and develop processes faster, and we are very happy to use them. But they do have some limitations, which were mentioned before. We have seen that Ultimus has tried successfully to overcome these limitations with composed process solution. With CPS, we have experienced even faster go live. Thanks to the solution and device independence, multilingual UI, and reusable composed solutions, we can help our customers with very quick prototyping and final solutions. Thank you for your attention, and I'm giving the microphone back to Carsten.
Interesting presentation on CPS. So in conclusion, low-code BPM platforms are extremely popular because they speed up the delivery of software that accelerates digital transformation, innovation, and improved customer experience, as we heard, as a very important part of this age of the customers. We believe our unique approach to low-code software development, composed process solutions, really moves the boundary of what is possible in terms of software speed of delivery, quality, and manageability, and of course, costs as well. Because with CPS, we no longer build individual software solutions. They are generated from business requirements. So if you would like to see composed process solutions applied to your specific business needs, you can contact me or go through our website and register for a proof of concept. That's very fast, and of course, it's free. If you can give us an hour of your time to understand your requirements, we will use CPS to build your solution the next day and demo it to you the day after that, or when it's convenient for you. So a few lucky customers have been able to use these CPS proof of concepts in production or our cloud platform. But I'm sorry, I can't promise that for every solution, but we are very excited to show you what's possible nonetheless. So before the wrap up, let's turn to some question and answers. And Joachim, are there any questions?
Yes, Carsten, there are several questions, but I see that we are running out of time, so I would like to focus on a few major questions. So let me start with the first one. And of course, if you can continue to ask questions using the QA area, or later after the webinar, just get in touch with us, and then we can clarify all the questions that you have. So let me see. Yeah, first question here. I would like to understand how CPS works.
Okay, so let me answer this in general sense. We will answer this technology-related questions in detail in our next webinar, as already mentioned. So maybe let me give you an analogy about this. Think about CPS kind of like HTML in the web browser. So HTML is just a description of what should be displayed on a web page, and the browser does the how work, so converting that description into a web page that you can see. So I hope this gives you an idea how CPS is working, and the details in the next webinar. Another one.
Okay. This is also related to CPS. One of the most time-consuming things is integrations. I don't see how CPS can help here.
Oh yeah, well, I'm from the solution business, so thanks for bringing this up, because this is always, quite challenging. And in our solutions, we learned a lot about integrations. We made integrations with other systems very easy, and we use standard technologies like web services. But as we all know that dealing with integrations can really delay software delivery, we addressed this specific part in two different ways. So first, every CPS integration becomes a reusable capability, like the document that I showed or the language. And so done once, it makes it available for all the next solutions. So this is one answer to this. And the second, with CPS, well, you simply need fewer integrations because CPS has built-in CRM and DMS capabilities, minimizing the synchronization need, with applications outside of CPS. And in many cases, it is enough to have data exchanged, when the request starts or ends. And this makes integrations much easier and reduces the efforts extremely. Anything else?
Yeah, we've got many questions here, but as I said, we wanted to stop at 5 o'clock. So let's do one last question, and the others, sorry for not answering it now online. We will get in touch with you after this call and clarify your questions. So thanks for everybody who is sharing his questions. Yeah, this one here, tool platform solution. Yeah, what are people buying? A tool, a solution? Is it in the cloud or on premise?
Okay, so there are many more questions than one in one question. Yeah. So, it's just like with the BMW, you are buying the cars and we are generating and servicing them. The solution can be provided on a cloud platform. Well, could be also in a private cloud or on premise. So it's really just as you like. And the same applies to the commercial models. There's either an annual subscription and a small initial setup fee, or on the other end of the spectrum, a license to a solution runtime and an annual solution support fee. So it's really up to you. You can select the model which makes most sense to you. So that's it.
Yeah, I have other questions, but as more and more questions come in, I think we should do it as discussed. I will summarize the questions after the call internally, and we will get in touch with everyone and then answer them individually, so to avoid that we are missing anything.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Carsten.
So, well, This concludes today's webinar. Once again, thank you very much for your participation and attention. We hope that we were able to meet your expectations and that the webinar was beneficial for your future business. Also, thank you very much to Clay Richardson and Hassan Irmak for the interesting speeches. And of course, a recording of the webinar will be published on our website tomorrow. Thank you all and goodbye.